For centuries, we have assumed that belief in a supreme creator was born from observation and logic. The traditional story suggests that as early humans grew more intelligent, they looked up at the stars, recognized the intricate design of the universe, and they logically deduced that someone, or something, must have built the clock. Argued that the concept of a deity began as a psychological coping mechanism, born entirely out of human anxiety, far removed from any kind of scientific observation. To understand this, we have to strip away all our modern scientific knowledge. We have to rewind the clock to primitive humanity and imagine a mind operating in a complete historical vacuum, entirely at the mercy of a chaotic and brutal environment. Operating in that historical vacuum, our highest religious concepts were forged by our deepest, most primal fears. Early humans were consumed by the daily, physical struggle for survival. They were not debating the cosmic origins of the universe. They were terrified of sudden storms, of devastating droughts, and of mysterious plagues, random forces that could wipe out a settlement overnight. Because we are naturally terrified of what we cannot understand, the human brain tries to make sense of chaos by projecting familiar traits onto it. We assign human emotions, intentions, and faces to these violent natural forces. This psychological projection created polytheism. Early people crammed their world with thousands of petty local deities, a god for the river, a god for the harvest, and a god of the wind. When the river flooded, the river god was angry and had to be appeased. These ancient gods were highly limited beings with human flaws, tempers, and appetites. Early mythmakers and poets formalized these stories, putting a recognizable human face on the terrifying unknown and making the gods behave like a chaotic mob of superpowered people. Polytheism operated as a negotiation tactic. It served as humanity's first attempt to bargain with the randomness of the universe. If the human mind naturally defaults to a chaotic mob of flawed local deities, how did we arrive at the idea of one single, infinitely perfect God? Hume answers this with a remarkably cynical observation: sycophancy. Primitive believers interacted with their local deities exactly the way desperate courtiers treat an unpredictable human prince. They engaged in a competitive bidding war of praise to win their specific deity's favor. One group would say, "My God is the strongest." A rival group would counter, "My God rules all the other gods." And another would claim, "My God is the supreme creator of the world." Eventually, this competitive flattery hits a logical ceiling: infinity. Believers pushed the definition of their patron gods so far that the deity ceased to be a relatable human projection. The god became an abstract, boundless, infinite entity. But this artificial inflation created a psychological trap. By inventing a god who is infinitely powerful, a being who can scrutinize your every hidden thought, believers inadvertently terrorized themselves into a state of absolute, paralyzing submission. The grand concept of modern monotheism is simply polytheism artificially inflated to the bursting point by human desperation and relentless flattery. This newly invented infinite God demanded impossibly pure, infinite devotion. That demand brought severe real-world consequences, breeding a culture of intense psychological strain and intolerance. Hume noted that under this system, believers prioritize what he called the monkish virtues. Unnatural acts like extreme penance, passive suffering, and forced humility are elevated above actual pro-social human morality and public spirit. This places an impossible psychological burden on the religious class. Priests and clerics are institutionally required to maintain and project a constant, unwavering state of ecstatic religious fervor. Because no human mind can genuinely sustain constant, infinite devotion, the inevitable result is hypocrisy, or as Hume called it, dissimulation. Believers and priests are forced to fake it, masking a cold reality with outward fanaticism. This forced hypocrisy opens a dangerous moral loophole. Believers begin to convince themselves that their extreme religious zealotry compensates for their actual vices, a mindset that has historically justified horrific acts of persecution. For Hume, theism stands as a monument to human fear. True intellectual maturity means accepting the terrifying uncertainties of life without needing to invent an invisible, infinite master to soothe our anxieties.